Good morning, guys. We are on another bedhead, but this is a continuation of yesterday's. So if you did not pick up yesterday's, you might want to take a second and go back. This is going to be, I don't know, 3 or 4, maybe 5 bedheads in a row, all dealing around the death of Lazarus. So if you did not get yesterday's, again, you can find that on my Facebook page if that's how you're finding these from yesterday, or you can always go to theshepherdsfellowship.org. Click the YouTube link there, which will take you to a video page, and then we have a collection there, just a bedhead. So you can find that there yesterday. So, but for those who did go ahead and get into that, we're going into part 2, as we're in John chapter 11, starting at verse 17. So continuing the story, it says, "On his arrival, Jesus found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days." And this is interesting news, just because I think John puts that there to make sure we know that Lazarus was dead. I mean, it wasn't like anything else was going on, or that he was just not feeling well, so he was laying down and people mistook him for being dead. He was dead. He had been in there for 4 days. It said that Bethany, where they were at, was less than 2 miles from Jerusalem, and many Jews had come to Mary and Martha to comfort them in the loss of their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him, but Mary stayed at home. "Lord," Martha said to Jesus, "if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But I know that even now God will do whatever you ask." Jesus said to her, "Your brother will rise again." Martha answered, "I know he will rise again in the resurrection at that last day." Jesus said to her, "I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me will live, even though he dies. And whoever lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this?" "Yes, Lord," she told him. "I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, who was to come into the world." And I like this. That conversation we're going to talk about quite a bit more towards the end. But I like the I don't know, just the representation there. Her immediate reaction is, "If you've been here, my brother would not have died." She knew that for certainty. That's a very strong faith from the things that she had seen before. And he gives her this opportunity of, "Do you believe that I'm the resurrection and life?" And she says, "Yes, you are the Son of God who was to come to this world. I believe you're the Christ." That kind of faith, even after the turmoil, even after the pain, even after you think it's a done deal. She doesn't realize what's about to happen, but she still believes, whether or not Jesus took care of the situation the way she thought that he should. She still believed. She still held on to her faith, and that's an important lesson to many of us. But it's not the main one sticking out in my head today, so we're going to come back to some of that here in a second to dig into it more. But even if things don't go your way, do you believe in Jesus? Do you believe that he is the Christ, that he is in charge, that he is the one acting on your best behalf, like Martha does? That's a good one right there. But continuing in, after he had this conversation with her, she goes back and she calls her sister Mary aside and says, "The teacher is here," she said, "and is asking for you." So when Mary heard this, she got up quickly and went to him. Now Jesus had not yet entered the village, but it was still at the place where Martha had met him. When the Jews had seen that Mary, who had been with Mary in the house, comforting her, noticed how quickly she got up and ran away, they followed her, thinking that she was going to the tomb to mourn. When Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." Same reaction, exact same comment as her sister. When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in the spirit and troubled. "Where have you laid him?" he asked. "Come and see, Lord," they replied. Jesus wept. And that's again, I know a lot of us know it, who maybe have grown up in church, maybe a part of youth group, or that type of thing where you're supposed to learn Bible verses and tell them. I remember in our youth group, when we did attendance, we were supposed to say a Bible verse that we remembered, and that was one of the most popular ones. Jesus wept. It's just a 2-word short one, but it's really packed with just a lot of power. I've heard different people comment on different reasons why they think Jesus wept. For some, that they believe that it was the lack of faith that he saw in these 2 women in this and in the Jewish community, that he couldn't change things up. So that lack of faith is what made him weep. I don't see that. Matter of fact, I see a ton of faith in the comments of the people that he's talking to. I think he just wept because he wept. He was hurting for Mary. He was hurting for Martha. Even though he knew what was about to happen, it just was overwhelming that his friends had gone through this. that other people are hurting. I think Jesus relates to us in our pain, even though he knows the victory. He just loves us that much that he connects with us on a heart level. So personally, that's why I think he wept. And the Jews, they themselves were trying to figure out why he's crying. So the Jews said, see how he loved him, the emotional response that he had. Whereas others were kind of split and saying, could he, who had opened the eyes of the blind man, the whole last chapter, couldn't he have kept this man from dying? Really, did he love him? He didn't show up. He didn't save him. He didn't keep him from dying to this final result. There's nothing he can do now, as far as what they know. And so there was kind of a split that's going to continue into these stories. But I think what I want to spend what's left of my time here on is this exchange between Jesus and Martha, because I find myself in Martha's shoes sometimes, and maybe you do too, where you're looking at Jesus about a situation, and you're thinking, God, if you just stepped in earlier, then I wouldn't have to be going through this. We wouldn't have had this loss. We wouldn't have this pain. I wouldn't have lost my job. I wouldn't, have lost this marriage. I wouldn't have it where my adult child's not speaking to me anymore. If you just fixed it earlier, then this wouldn't have happened. And whatever this is seems to be so big, you can't fix it now. Is kind of what we get to sometimes. And she comes in, she's got the faith. She said, if you had stepped in, it would be fine. And then she says this incredible statement, but I know that even now, God will give you whatever you ask. She's even taken a step further than what I have in the past. It's not just, hey, if you stepped in early, everything will be fine. But even now, I know you can do whatever you want. And I think a lot of us have that faith in our heart, as far as those who have accepted Jesus as leader and forgiven their lives. Maybe, especially if we've got some mileage under our spiritual walk and have seen him do incredible things, where we're just like, you can do whatever you want. And Jesus says, well, I'm going to take care of the situation. And he goes, your brother will rise again. But this is kind of telling what she says. She goes, I know he'll rise again in the resurrection at the last day. I mean, I know everything will be okay when I'm in heaven. I know everything will be okay at the end. But even with that incredible statement of, I know that God will give you whatever you ask, she was limiting in her mind what Jesus that could be. She never comprehended that Jesus could raise her brother that day, that Jesus could step in and heal that marriage right now, or over a short process, or that, and not to give up, or not to throw it aside, if everybody's willing to hear Jesus' voice, which we're going to talk about later. That Jesus could take and heal that relationship with your kid, that Jesus could heal that situation at work, that Jesus can heal the situations that are in front of you. That she kind of had this, you can do whatever you want, Jesus, but I'm not going to let myself start dreaming about it. I'm not going to let myself really open my eyes to something that might be radical, might be completely different. So Jesus is saying, do you believe I can do whatever I want? Yeah, you're the Christ. I know you can do whatever you want. But again, she never imagined that he was going to be raising Lazarus, and that Lazarus would be back in her arms, in her life, in just a matter of a few moments. So I think this is just kind of an encouragement not to limit Jesus by our own expectations, our own lack of dreams, our own lack of vision, that he can do whatever he wants, and he will do whatever he wants. And it will be for the betterment of his will, for his people, for his children, and for freedom's sake. So keep your eyes open for Jesus today. If you got a big situation in front of you right now and you don't think there's any way to get through it, look to him, and don't just say, I know you can do whatever you want with this. I know that you've got a plan for this. But just say, what is that plan? What is tomorrow? What can I hold on to? Let's grab onto some hope and see what Jesus would do. He'll meet you emotionally. He'll plug right into where you're at emotionally. He loves you dearly. You're his child. But dream a little. Dream God's dreams. And the picture might change pretty radically, pretty quick, or it might be a little bit of a process, but either way, he's got you in his hands. He can do whatever he wants. It's just a matter of us taking and saying, yes, Lord, and following him. So that's my thoughts. I'll talk to you guys more. We're going to continue into this with Lazarus. I love this story. Talk to you guys. Be blessed.